What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fundamentally Sound Podcast. I am Jared, here with my brother Zach. We're here to talk everything NBA basketball. Zach, how are you doing today?
It's been doing pretty good. It's been a while since we've sat down and talked about basketball. I mean, there's less than 10 games left for most teams. A lot of drama still going on at this point, especially like Taylor Jenkins, which we'll talk about first, is I think something that nobody saw coming, especially Taylor Jenkins, and I would assume a lot of Grizzlies fans and basically everybody around the league. Is just not something you expect as a top 4 seed in the West 10 games before the playoffs, you know?
Yeah, pretty crazy. Things are heating up in the East and the West, but I think that's where we're going to start because that's probably the biggest news is Taylor Jenkins.
Oh, yeah, I would say so.
After 6 years with the Grizzlies, out as the head coach. Grizzlies haven't been playing well lately, lost 6 of their last 8. There's been some reports that things have been going on behind the scenes, some tension between the front office and the coaching staff. But initially, what are your thoughts about what this means for the Grizzlies the rest of the season and going forward?
I just think, I mean, he was in Milwaukee prior to getting the job in Memphis, and I thought he was a really good assistant coach. And kind of honestly, like, I figured once Bud ran his course with Coach Bud, it was like Taylor Jenkins was going to be one of the top assistants and possibly get the job. But then obviously he landed in Memphis, and I mean, last year you can't really. I mean, with all the injuries they had last year, you can't put any of that on him at all. And then this year, you're in a really competitive West, and you're doing well. You guys are healthy. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. and then obviously John Morant are your leaders, and you have a lot of guys around them to help build the team. And obviously, I don't think you guys are contending this year, and that's okay. But at the same time, it's like if you don't think Taylor Jenkins is the right guy, like that's okay. But to fire him at this point in the season with 10 games left, and now the majority of the guys in the locker room are not confused, but like you have to completely pivot now to learning a whole new coach, a whole new scheme, probably just kind of a lot to take in when you at the same time you're focusing on battling the Lakers for the top 4 seed. You want home court advantage in the playoffs. Should be focusing on playing basketball and not learning about a new coach, and then also wondering why he got fired. And then I think you brought it up that there has been some tension between Desmond Bane and Santi Aldama, because there was a clip that got released a little while ago where I believe Desmond Bane shoved Santi someone shoved one of the other ones.
Yeah.
So then there's that tension there, and who knows what's going on behind the scenes with that whole organization.
Right. Well, and I mean, my biggest takeaway is just like the timing of it all.
Yeah, that's the big
They
thing.
fired him with 9 games left in the regular season. It's so weird that they would fire him now and decide to go with an assistant coach as an interim, because it kind of feels like they're just punting on the season.
Yeah, it
But
does.
also, I mean, with 9 games left in the season, if you're planning on punting anyways, why wouldn't you just maybe give Taylor Jenkins one more chance? See how the playoffs go.
Yeah,
Like the West is competitive. There's no reason that a 6 seed couldn't beat a 3 seed. Um,
exactly.
but I don't know. I think from what I read into, I guess the writing's kind of been on the wall since last offseason. I actually didn't know this until I was reading it, but I guess last offseason, the front office basically told Taylor Jenkins that they were going to pretty much just gut his entire assistant coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
And they hired like 5 or 6 new assistant coaches.
Yeah.
And the front office is the one that was pushing for the offense that we've seen from the Grizzlies, which is um, essentially no pick and rolls at all. Um,
Yeah, which is
which is
interesting.
yeah, crazy when you have Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant as your foundational pieces. You would think, especially with a playmaker like Ja, that you would want him running the pick and roll.
Right.
Um, and I guess there's obviously speculation because nothing's official and whatnot, but I guess Ja had kind of voiced his frustration with the offense because
Yeah.
it seemed like teams are maybe starting to figure out the whole no pick and roll thing, and Ja was upset because he wasn't getting
Hmm.
the to run the offense the way he wanted without the pick and roll. And so Taylor started to put some of the old pick and roll plays back in, and I guess it kind of
Yeah.
seemed like that was the final straw. Um, but I don't know. I just feel like as a front office, like that shouldn't be your decision. You
No.
know, I feel like the coaches, the guys that work with the players every single day, have a close, intimate relationship with those guys, know their strengths and their weaknesses, should be the
Yeah.
ones that get to design the offense. Now, obviously, this change in offense um, was a positive thing for most of the season, but kind of what we've been seeing is teams have kind of started to figure out how to defend it pretty
Yeah.
easily. And it's a big change because I mean the pick and roll is essentially it's like the foundation piece of any offense. It seems like
Right.
um, so to not have a pick and roll at all in your offense seems like a weird thing to do, especially when your star player is John Morant. You know,
Exactly.
a ball dominant um, point guard who facilitates very well, is able to, get ahead of steam and go downhill. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like you should try to maybe, I don't know, look at those MVP Westbrook years to design an offense
Right.
like that. Um, do something to play to his strengths, but
Hmm.
it's again a situation where we see the front office having more control and more say than it kind of seems like maybe they should.
Yeah, that whole situation is like just like having the front office is like you have like it's your job to hire people. I get that, and hire and fire people, like that's your job, and to build a team. But I think, like for example, the Bucks are a really good team, really good at doing this. Um, like they'll kind of default, especially now. They default a lot of it to Doc Rivers, and just kind of let Doc like run the show, and that's okay. Like some coaches shouldn't run the show because like they're kind of new, but again, Doc is he's a veteran guy, and I think even Doc, like it came out a couple weeks ago that he went to Giannis and he went to Dame, and like what do we think needs to change, like acknowledging and realizing that Dame and Giannis they run the show. They're the leaders. They're the ones that have the most impact on what happens on the floor. And you can have the scheme that you want, and you can try to implement your own stuff from the front office. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that the guys that have that direct impact all work together. And essentially, like you said, when they gutted Taylor Jenkins' assistant coaching, like his hands were tied, and essentially you're just expecting him to fail, and it's like, oh, like you have to step up to this challenge now that we put you in, and then now you're a top four seed, you're doing pretty well, and then you just fire him, and he's gonna be probably if he probably will be the first coach to have a job when the firings and hirings start in the offseason.
Right. Well, and I think another thing to think about um, as far as mismanagement from the front office is you
Mm-hmm.
look at 2 seasons ago. when the Grizzlies were healthy. And I think that roster as constructed isn't as good as they are now. Um,
Yeah.
Still, that team was very good,
Yeah.
and was able to be a promising young team on the rise. And then
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately last year, everything just hit the fan, and they had a whole slew of injuries and other things going wrong.
Right.
Um, but that's where I don't understand the decision to want to change the offense when
Mm-hmm.
the season prior it was working. Like the reason that
Right.
they only won 27 games last year isn't because the offense wasn't working. It was because everyone was hurt. Because your
Right.
stars were out and they weren't able to, have their best players on the court. So you would think now
Right.
they have a better roster than they did 2 seasons ago when they were a good up and coming young team. Why not try to run that back with the same offense? Again, playing to
Yeah.
the strengths of your stars. And I don't know, they chose not to do that. Like I said, gutted Taylor Jenkins' coaching staff, and um, me, and that more than anything was probably the beginning of the end for him, unfortunately, with his time in Memphis.
Yeah.
But no, I 100% agree with you. I mean, unfortunately, with the Bucks coaching payroll situation,
Yeah.
because they're paying, they're still paying Adrian Griffin. They're paying Doc a ton of money.
Yeah.
Um, he's likely going to coach out the rest of his contract,
Uh-huh.
because they're probably not going to want to have three head coaches on the payroll,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate because I'd love to see Taylor Jenkins back in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I think the Bucks are kind of stuck with Doc, but there's pros and cons to that. Doc has won a championship despite
Mm-hmm.
some of his faults in the playoffs in the past. He is a championship winning coach.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think some people. I mean, I was like, again, he's blown a lot of 3-1 leads, and you have those negatives. But at the end of the day, he's won a championship, and I get that roster was very good, but it's like you can't take that away from him. So
I mean, it's the same argument, honestly, with Bud. The argument with
right,
Bud was that he's a regular season coach. He can't
right,
really coach that well in the playoffs when adjustments need to be made on the fly.
mm-hmm.
But the one thing that we've seen, I think, over and over again that can offset that is a star player. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
like Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen were able to do that for Doc. Um,
Uh huh.
Chris and Giannis were able to do that for Bud. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason that Chris and Dame wouldn't be able to do that for Doc, again, given this scenario. Um, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, right now the Bucks are in a little bit of a tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
A report came out a couple days ago, that Dame is out indefinitely. He
Yeah.
joins Victor in the blood clot gang. Um, Deep vein thrombosis, I think, is the official term, but he's got a blood clot in his
Yeah.
leg. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, with something like a blood clot, there's no real timetable. Um, they're hoping he can maybe come back for the playoffs, but it
Yeah.
doesn't
Again,
doesn't look great.
yeah. Like there was optimism, but then it's like at the same time the medication or whatever treatment he's on takes 3 months, so it's like I don't know.
Right.
It's like it's kind of one of those things again with a blood clot. It's like you just kind of gotta wait it out
Yeah.
and have the treatment. And thankfully they caught it early. But again, it's just kind of one of those things. This close to the playoffs, it's like I think that you're probably if Dame were to come back, I do think it would be like it's going to be kind of a roles reverse situation of last year where it's like you're going to probably have to play a playoff series without Dame and see what Giannis can do, and how like if he can carry a team and at least for a playoff series, but if not, it's kind of like kicking the ball towards next season and then kind of like reevaluating certain players like Brooke Lopez, and then you've talked about Jericho Sims, who he could be a piece, and try to convince him to stay. Kevin Porter Jr. has been one of the best trade deadline pickups in the whole league. So it's kind of reevaluating everything next year, and it's really unfortunate that yet again the Bucks deal with injuries, and even in the championship season, they dealt with injuries, and it's like they can never be healthy, and it's unfortunate. Right now they sit at the sixth seed. I think they're a game and a half behind Detroit. Um, so I don't know. We'll kind of see what happens there. I think there's I think less than 10 games left for them too. Bobby's coming back from a suspension in a couple games finally, but it looks like they will avoid the play-in. But I think the biggest thing is like if they get the Knicks first round, it could be rough for them. But if they do end up getting the Pacers, I think there's a real shot there. But the Knicks, I think even last night they kind of um, struggled the other night against the Knicks, and it's like they haven't done well against those top teams in the East, and with no Dame there, it's like they really don't have a shot.
Yeah. I just like I go back to it's just so frustrating. I feel like because as a
Mhm.
Bucks fan, it's been the same story every single year,
Mhm.
including the year that they won the championship. Thankfully, Giannis is superhuman and was able to
Right.
come back from a knee injury in a week. Um, but I mean, even then, in that playoff run, they lost Dante DiVincenzo, who was a starter on that team. They
Right.
lost him in the first round, um,
Mhm.
and he didn't play the rest of the playoffs. Um,
Yeah.
and then Giannis has been hurt. Chris was hurt. Dame was hurt. These last couple years, it's just been so frustrating to have these untimely
Mhm.
injuries again and again and again. Um, and now even at this point, it looked like they're finally going to have a healthy team going into the playoffs, and then it's not even so much an injury as it is just like an unfortunate medical thing that pops up
Right.
with Dame and his blood clot. It's
Yeah.
again, I mean, we talked about the Grizzlies punting, but I think it kind of seems like the Bucks are in a similar situation now where unfortunately, without Dame, they're not going to be able to contend for a championship. Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, they're going to be able, they're still going to make the playoffs. Um,
Yeah.
like you said, hopefully, maybe sneak up to that 5 seed. Um,
Yeah.
but if not, I think it's probably a first round exit for them this year.
Mhm.
And they'll have to try to retool again this year, this offseason.
Yeah, a lot of interesting conversations and situations with contracts and everything. But again, if you keep Dame, keep Giannis, Kuz will be around. The roster could look drastically different. I'm not drastically different next year. Maybe convince Gary Trent to stay another year, or maybe keep him a long term deal because he's been huge.
Or
Kevin Porter Jr.
Torian.
has been great off the bench. Torian's been really good. Um, but again, it's just kind of it's like you said, it's gonna be a punt year. I think for them, like it's gonna be a first round exit. Depending on who they play, unless Dame somehow would come back from this, it would be like that the treatment would work quicker than expected, and then it would be like, um, maybe he comes back a couple games into the playoffs, and then we'll see.
Yeah, another top news story that's kind of been floating around NBA media the last couple weeks is kind of this situation that we saw between LeBron and Stephen A. We saw LeBron confronted Stephen A. At a game. I think it was a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, this yeah,
basically,
a couple weeks.
basically told him off to his face, and
Yeah,
man, since then, Stephen A. has just continued to spiral down. Like he won't
Yeah.
stop talking about it. Like it's we are witnessing a crash out in real time on live television every single day. Um,
Yeah.
what are your, I mean, initial thoughts about the whole Stephen A. and LeBron beef?
So again, I think the initial beef came because LeBron had, or not LeBron, Stephen A. had mentioned Bronny and said some negative things, and it's like at the end of the day, I get NBA, like Bronny's an NBA player, but at the same time, LeBron is a father, and he's not just gonna let somebody disrespect his son on national television and say things that just aren't needed to be said. So it's like you understand from that perspective where LeBron was, and I don't. I think Nick Wright said this. It's like Stephen A. could have very easily went on television the next day and apologized and been I'm sorry, like I acknowledged like I was in the wrong, like it came off differently maybe than it should have. I understand where LeBron is coming from, like retract statements, things like that, and could have just squashed it there and been done with it. But then he proceeded to just dig himself a deeper hole. And then the other day he brought up Kobe and LeBron not being at Kobe's memorial. And then you're like, you don't need to bring up Kobe. And then D Wade not being there for that either. We'll get into that a little bit later. But it's like you're bringing up things that you don't need to bring up and people that you don't need to bring up. And for a guy who already, I would argue to say that is not well respected and liked that much in the media, um, he gets a lot of money because I guess people watch him for his personality. But I know myself, I don't listen to him. I don't take what he says like serious. He's gonna say what he's gonna say. I get he's a big name in sports media. He has his own podcast and things like that. But it's like at the same time, it's like you're already kind of looked at negatively in fans' eyes, and you're gonna try to go up against LeBron, one of the at this point the biggest name in basketball right now, and you're gonna try to disrespect him and his family, and then you're gonna say things that you don't need to say, and you're just completely losing it, and just nobody is on your side right now, and rightfully so.
Well, and like my biggest thing too is not only is it things that he didn't need to say, it's things that are factually not true. Um,
Exactly, and
he
yeah,
said he
yeah,
said that LeBron wasn't at Kobe's memorial. LeBron was at Kobe's
hmm
memorial. He just asked not to be put on camera.
yeah, and
Um,
rightfully so. It's an emotional
right,
day for him, so
exactly, and that should be respected. And that could also have been something that Stephen A. could have easily fact checked.
right,
Then he brings up that LeBron wasn't there for D Wade when I think it was either his Hall of Fame or his jersey retirement ceremony.
it was the jersey retirement, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. And LeBron wasn't there for that, but
Hmm.
the context came out. I think it was earlier today that the reason LeBron wasn't there is because that was during the time when Bronny had just went through his cardiac arrest, and so LeBron
Yeah,
was with Bronny in the hospital as he was
exactly.
recovering.
Hmm.
So obviously, if Bronny's healthy and everything, LeBron's for sure going to be there for that. But again, it goes back to him being a great family man. He's
Yeah.
obviously 100% you're going to be there for your son
Hmm.
when he's in the hospital fighting for his life. Like, it
Hmm.
just doesn't make any sense. And again, that's something that could have been fact checked.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I used to be a big First Take listener when Max was on the show. I thought Stephen A. and Max had great um,
Yeah.
chemistry and back and forth, but
Hmm.
it came out, it's come out over the years, kind of the drama behind the scenes. Um, and the reason Max got kicked off the show is because Stephen A. wanted him off because Max made him look bad a lot.
Exactly.
And now, First Take has devolved into what it is today, which is just a complete, garbage television program
it, it's
full of
it's
full
so
of
much
nonsense
about like,
takes.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's just it's so much not about like the actual like the sport, and it's
yeah,
like,
it's about saying the
guys could have big
clickbaity thing.
nights. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, guys could have big nights. Like Jokic could have a big night, Giannis could have a triple double or whatever it is, and they don't talk about that. Instead, they always talk about the big market teams, and then they try to bring like race into everything and things like that. And it's like, if you look at like how the NFL is presented, like Dan Orlovsky does a great job at this, during the NFL season. He is a like football nerd, and he breaks down the game. It's like, that's the kind of stuff we want, that kind of thing. It's like, we don't care about like drama and headlines and behind the scenes stuff. It's like, we care about basketball and like certain sets, people run certain defenses, why teams I have better offenses and things like that. It's like, save the drama for like, you can talk about it like every now and then, but don't fill your show with it because people don't care about it.
right. Well, and it's unfortunate that the drama-filled stuff is what gets the clicks, and that's what gets
Right.
made into clips and is posted online and
Uh
shared,
huh.
and it's all like just clickbait, like outrage content for the purpose of engagement online. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's clear when you look at the guys or the rotation of people that is regularly on First Take now, Kendrick Perkins, Mad Dog, like those guys, they're all the same media personality where they're just going to
Exactly.
say ridiculous stuff that doesn't make any sense for the point and the purpose of outraging everyone and getting people to talk
Right.
about them because that's all they care about. They care about, oh, are people talking about what I said? I think there was a halftime, a TNT halftime, or maybe it was an ESPN halftime, like a month or so ago. Um, I'm blanking, the Warriors former GM, Bob Myers,
Bob Myers.
because he does television now. Bob Myers
Yep.
went on the half
He's
game
very
or
good at television too.
yeah, went on the halftime show and talked about the Warriors offense, broke it down, talked
Mm-hmm.
about their motion and movement off ball, what Steph does so well. And really emphasized, broke down clips from the game they were watching. And then Perk got up there, and I think they were playing the Nuggets or something, and just goes, yeah, I don't know, man. Jokic has to score more, and then the
Yeah.
Nuggets will win. Like, there's no, it, yeah, there's no in-depth breaking down of the game. There's no like thought or anything given to it. They just say what needs to be said to generate clicks. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that, that's the majority of ESPN. And
Exactly.
um, that people have to, if you want that kind of content, have to search it out and look for it. When in reality, that should be the kind of content that's readily available to sports fans on national media, but
Yep.
it's not.
And the one thing that the ESPN did right, like in the past couple months, is they had Kenny Beecham on their show. You know, if you watch Kenny's content, he's got what, like 4 channels or something like that. He is like, when it comes to like basketball stuff, like he knows more than 95% of the people that are on ESPN when it comes to basketball. It's insane because he breaks down the game, and then he goes through different situations in the league and he'll make videos on it and he knows his stuff. And it's, yeah, again, it's unfortunate when you have guys like Kendrick Perkins, who like retired basketball guys who think they know everything, when it's like, you didn't accomplish anything in your career that is of value. So it's like, your opinion doesn't matter, and it's like, if you put in some effort to actually watch the game and break it down, instead of like being like, oh, I don't really watch the game, I just kind of like box score watch and see what happens during the game, and not knowing what happens and just kind of basing your opinion off of, um, headlines and clickbait titles like that, and just to draw more clickbait, then it's like that's why the media sucks, and that's why viewership is down. Frankly,
Yeah, I mean, we can even see it on like aside from ESPN, we see it on TNT too. You know, as much as
right?
everyone loves that crew, they
Mm-hmm.
don't really do any in-depth analysis besides Kenny's segment where he goes to the board and breaks stuff down. You
Right.
know, Shaq and Chuck don't provide any analysis like Kenny does. You
Yeah.
know, they continue to perpetuate the idea um, that it's all about clickbait. It's all about being funny. Saying something funny or getting the clip, making the
Mm.
memorable moment. And it's unfortunate because those national broadcasts, those are your opportunities to boost viewership. To get the
Exactly.
casual fans who don't watch every day to tune into one of those national broadcasts, enjoy the content, and then decide to engage in it more. But when all that's being talked about is drama or just dogging on the current state of the NBA and just talking negatively about everything, it's going to turn people away from the game. And I think that's a big part of what we've been seeing over these last couple years, and a big reason why viewership is so down this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that, like, obviously, like, the inside the NBA crew, it's like Shaq and Kenny, like their chemistry, like they're hilarious together, and like a big reason why people want to keep them around. But at the same time, it's like you do, you know, talk a lot of negative about the league and about things like that, and you don't break it down, and it's like you're. It's really hard to get like new fans, like people like you and I who have been following the NBA for a while. Like you can see drastically the production that has gone down. Um, and the viewership that has gone down along with it. And I think we talked about this. Like Adam Silver said, like viewership is down. Frankly, it's legal viewership because it's so freaking hard to watch a game. Like nobody's gonna pay for League Pass, and then it's just so easy to find other websites that are free to watch the games on. It just is. And then it's like Adam Silver also brought up that they're scrapping the All Star game, the format that they had this year. That was just horrendous. It was I don't know what they were thinking. Thankfully, they're scrapping it, and we'll see what they do next year. But it's like you need to not only like see what media is being perceived and how like the game is being perceived through them, but just about how accessible the NBA is to be able to watch. Like I get the NFL is a shorter season and it's only on Sundays, but you're able to watch a game wherever, like it's on local TV every Sunday, every Monday, every Thursday. Like you're able to watch it. So I don't know what they do as far as like how you increase viewership, but like people still watch. Like people like you and I that love basketball watch it because it's entertaining. But at the same time, it's like it's hard to get new viewers when people tune in and see like, okay, these guys are just like joking about the league. Like I don't really know what I'm getting into, and it's hard to get new viewers.
Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely solutions and routes they could take.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like the Suns, for example, all Suns
Yep.
games are broadcast on local television. That's was a change in the decision that their owner made to help increase Suns viewership, and I think that's a
Yep.
phenomenal idea. I know that the Bucks and the Brewers, for that matter, have a relationship with I think one of the local news or local TV stations in Milwaukee where a handful of games get broadcast on their network for free every year. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and that's a great way to do it too, because I mean even if it's 10 games get broadcast
Uh huh.
onto local television, there's a chance that you could draw in some fans from those handful of games that are free and available to watch. Um,
Yeah.
but I think a big part of it, um, as far as you mentioned that thing about how legal viewership is down, another big turn off, I think for a lot of people is that if you don't have the money to pay for like League Pass or a
Yep.
subscription to
Hmm.
FanDuel Sports to watch all the games, it's hard to find a place to watch the games.
Exactly.
And a lot of people just aren't willing to put in the effort or don't know how to go about
Yeah.
finding the game so that they can actually watch and enjoy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Shifting gears here a little bit, getting out of all this negativity. Um, One team I wanted to talk about is the Bulls because they've been really hot lately. I think they've won like 8 of their last 10 or something like that. Coming out of the All-Star break, they have just been a force to be reckoned with. Kobe White has been averaging 26 a game post All-Star break. Josh Giddey has been looking like a completely new player here. He's up to 22 and a half points per game. Let's see, 23 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists in 13 games since the All Star break, averaging almost a triple double. And suddenly the Bulls look like a team that might actually have a nice young core. What are
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I think that like when the Caruso Giddy trade happened, I think immediately everybody's like great trade for the for the Thunder, and it was at the time. But I think Giddy too. It's like he's a young player who like he still has a lot to grow into, and we kind of knew like we saw some flashes in OKC what he was going to be, and then I think it's like the Bulls did such a we talked about this excuse me they've done such a horrible job of like actually knowing how to rebuild. Like when you got rid of DeMar Levine, you didn't get anything of significance in return. But then Giddy, like, it just seems like this past month or so has just been like come into his own, and hopefully the Bulls realize this that you have Matas Buzelos alongside of Giddy and Toby White that you can build around now. So don't get caught up in certain people and certain other players that you want to try to build around or try to bring people in. It's like you have a young core in front of you on your team currently that's has a lot of potential. So I think that the big part or the big game was a couple nights ago was against the Lakers, where they scored 9 points in 10 seconds, and they should not have won that game at all, but they did. Giddy hit a half court shot to win it. Um, so yeah, I do think like after so much time in purgatory and like trying to get out of this rebuild, the Bulls have found something, and something that I know Kenny's happy about, Kenny Beecham's happy about, and Bulls fans finally have something to be excited about and cheer about.
Yeah, I remember I was so vocal when the trade went down, Giddy for Caruso, straight up. I was so vocal that it was an absolute fleecing by the Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Giddy has definitely, I think, maybe struggled a little bit to find his rhythm. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, given the small sample size here, I mean, 13 games is a good chunk of the season where it really seems like
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of figured things out and started to
Mm-hmm.
play up to that, I think, full potential that we've seen from what was he, the number 6 overall pick um,
Something like that.
back when he was drafted. Obviously, we've always known he's a phenomenal passer, just a really great, like, true point guard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll be interesting going into this off season to see um, what happens to him in free agency. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously he'll be a restricted free agent. This is his
Right.
fourth year. So it's not like he's just going to walk away from the Bulls. They'll probably match any offer that he gets from another team. But I would
Mm.
have to think, especially with how hot he's been down the stretch here, that he's going to get a nice contract.
Right.
And suddenly this idea of pairing him and Kobe White together in the backcourt um, doesn't seem like that bad of a place to be in for the Bulls. They're going to have a decent draft pick this year. Um, Hopefully, Matas Buzelis can continue to develop and take the next steps in his progression as an NBA player and a top draft pick. They're going to get another great young player in what's looking like is going to be a pretty decent draft class this year. Um, and then I don't know, is Vooch a free agent or do they have him as a trade piece?
Uh,
Let's see. Because if they have him as a trade piece too, um, potentially.
uh,
No, they got him another year still. So
okay.
that they
Okay.
could deal him in the off season, and maybe go for a younger look at the center position too. And then all of a sudden, that Bulls team, who people have been dogging on, I think us included, for kind of the
Yeah.
mismanagement of losing DeMar, trading Levine and Caruso, and getting no first round picks back. Now all of a sudden, you got back a young, potential young star in Josh Giddey. You've allowed Kobe White to come into his own, and be a great scorer like we've seen him be the last couple years. And
Right.
now they're going to be able to continue to build on this late season success, and this, I mean, small postseason run that they'll be able to make, um,
Yeah.
with the
See if
play-in,
they make out of the plan this year. Yeah.
right? But even at that, I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of looks like they're in a pretty decent spot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, comparatively, um, looking at the division, Cavs, Bucks, Pacers, Pistons, um, the bar is fairly high,
Right.
considering, all those teams are top, those four teams make up four of the top six teams in the East. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but timeline wise, I mean, uh, this renaissance of Josh Giddey and Kobe White might kind of boost their rebuild in the right direction and get them out of this purgatory spot that they've been stuck in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it just makes you kind of wonder, though. It's like if they had been more aggressive and gotten more from DeMar and Levine when they got rid of them, it's like you could be in like a really good spot, you know?
Right.
Like you're in a good spot right now, but if like you had a couple firsts to work with and a couple more young pieces to either keep or to move, it's like you could be a legitimate like solid team in a couple years. Or it's like again, they still could, if they hit on some draft picks and stuff like that, but it's like you have a core now, and stick with it and see where it goes because I think they have a very bright future there. And plus, you're a big market, so again, that's appealing for a lot of free agents.
Right. Well, okay, so
Okay.
just looked and clarified the Bulls do have their first round pick. They had originally
Mm-hmm.
traded it away for DeMar DeRozan, but then when Fox went to the Spurs and Levine went to the Kings, Spurs gave the Bulls their first round pick back. It's all super
Okay.
confusing. They don't have the Blazers pick this year. It looks like 'cause it's top 14 protected, so I guess maybe they could. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but still, what we were saying is, they're going to have a lottery pick. alongside this young core. And I mean, if you're a Bulls fan, you definitely have hope for the future, I think.
Right, right, for sure.
Okay. Switching to the top of the Eastern Conference standings, one team that I've been pretty vocal about that I think um, really has a chance to be an NBA champion this year is the Cavs. But kind of since I said that a couple weeks ago, the Cavs have really been struggling. They've
Mm-hmm.
essentially been playing 500 basketball. Um, I don't really know because I don't think anyone's hurt. But what do you make of kind of this late season slump that the Cavs are in?
I think like, and we talked about it. It's like we kind of, especially early on, the Cavs are like we kind of like are waiting for them to hit their slump or like a bad shooting stretch and things like that. And I think that's part of it. Maybe they hit it and it was just like, hopefully it doesn't carry into the playoffs. I don't think it will. I do think that they still could make a run, but it's like this is a little concerning, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. Is it kind of a similar situation to Boston, like we talked about, where it's like they're coasting now? It's like they kind of have that gap between themselves and Boston, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to, slump. You kind of want to build momentum to the playoffs. So, it's just an interesting situation. I wouldn't be concerned at all if I'm Cavs fans. It's like you're still going to be okay. And I do think that guys like Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, who have been to the playoffs and have some experience, like they'll be okay come playoff time. So it's interesting to see that they've like hit the slump now at this point in the year. It's kind of weird, but I don't think it's anything to be of any major concern. I think that if it continues where it's like maybe you drop like maybe you go like say they have 10 games left, if you go like 3-6, then you're like or 3-7, you're like maybe this is not the best, but um we'll see. But in my opinion, I don't think it's anything they need to be super concerned about right now.
Yeah, see, I mean, I feel the opposite.
Okay.
Because right below them is the Celtics, and
Yeah, that's
quietly,
true.
we talked at length about how we need to see the Celtics flip the switch, and can they flip the switch? Well, since we've said that, Celtics currently on an 8 game win streak. They won 13 of their last 14 games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Seems like they've flipped the switch. And
Yeah.
obviously, when you look at that team and that roster, along with the playoff experience and being the reigning NBA champions, they now have in the added factor that they're not going to be the 1 seed. So maybe there's
Yeah.
less pressure on them, and they can kind of play a little looser. Um, Whereas the Caps have a ton of pressure on them because they've been one of the best team in the East all year long, one of the best teams in the NBA,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're a team that does have playoff experience, but hasn't been able to get over the hump and hasn't been able to get past the Celtics. Um,
Yeah.
I think going into the playoffs, um, unless things change and maybe the Cavs are able to turn it around, um, and get hot, in the first and second round while they're trying to make their run to the Eastern Conference Finals. Um, I don't know. I think we could be potentially be looking at another Celtics trip to the finals.
Yeah, I think that I do think that's going to be a very fun series between those two. I mean, we saw it earlier this year where I think the Celtics were up like 27-6 or something like that, and Tatum's already gloating and everything. And then the Cavs came back and won it, and it's going to be interesting to see how like the difference in how the teams approach a playoff series between the two, because the Celtics do have that experience and that potential. And then I think when it comes to expectations, Obviously, like this year, the Cavs have that expectation, and rightfully so. But it's like with the Celtics, I wouldn't say there's maybe not more of an expectation, but at the same time, this offseason you have dumped and invested a lot of money into your core, um, and you kind of expect to be back in the finals. It's not one of these things where it's like you win a championship, like one championship, and then after that it's like just make deep playoff runs. It's like no, you're expected to build a dynasty here, and the Cavs could be in their way. So I think if it comes down to a conference finals between those two, that's gonna go 6 or 7, and um, if the Cavs are still slumping, the Celtics could make quick work of them. So it's like, I do agree with your point that it's like the Cavs have to know what the animal that they're dealing with in Boston, and that what they can do come playoff time, and the Cavs need to be ready for it.
Right. Well, and I mean, part of the problem too is I think if you're the Cavs, you're looking at
Mm-hmm.
directly below you, the Celtics are just absolutely on fire right now.
Right.
Um, and as a player, you might start to look ahead a little bit, and
Uh huh.
that could be a big issue too, because maybe not first round they'll have issues, but second round, you're talking about running into a Pacers team who we've seen make a run in the conference finals before, a really hot Pistons team potentially,
Mm-hmm.
who's young coming into their own, but is starting to look like an actual good basketball team. Um,
Yeah.
and if that slump continues and they're not able to get back to their dominant multiple 15 game win streak play, you know,
Yeah.
there's a real possibility that a young, hungry team like Detroit could make it out of the first round and then make it out of the second round too. We've
Yeah.
seen teams, lower seeded teams, make runs to the conference finals. We've seen the Heat do it a
Mm-hmm.
handful of times. The Hawks did it the year that the Bucks went to the finals. The Hawks made it to the
Mm-hmm.
conference finals. Um, we've seen a seven-seeded Lakers team make it to the conference finals. Like it's not uncommon for a a low-seeded team to hit their stride at the right time and go on a run.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and as a higher-seeded team, you have to be on the lookout for that, um, because obviously the Celtics are a huge threat to you. Um,
Yeah.
but if you start to look ahead too far, you might all of a sudden find yourself in a hole trying to dig your way out of a series where you're down a game or two against
Right.
against a team like Detroit or Indy. All right, well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Fundamentally Sound podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If there's anything you want us to talk about, any topics, make sure you leave it down below in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media on TikTok and Instagram at Fundamentally Sound Pod. For Zach, I am Jared. This has been the Fundamentally Sound podcast. We will see you guys next week.